This interview is part of the Amplify ETF's second quarter update series. I'm speaking with Mike Akins, the CEO of ETF Action, and they serve as the index provider to the newly launched Amplify Thematic's All-Stars ETF, symbol MVPS. Mike, congratulations on the launch of the new fund.
Thanks a lot. We're really excited about it.
So, Mike, why don't we start with the investment thesis behind the index that powers MVPS?
You bet. So, at ETF Action, we cover all U.S. listed ETFs across the landscape. And looking at the thematic landscape in particular, we've seen an explosion of new product and a very popular demand from investors. So if you think about the start of 2019, there was less than 50 ETFs that we classified as thematic and about $30 billion in AUM. Today, we have over 150 thematic ETFs and over $130 billion in AUM. And investors are clearly showing that demand for it. But as we see more proliferation in product, we're seeing more and more divergence across what these actual strategies are focusing on as far as companies go. So take an example like clean energy. If you look at the 5 largest clean energy ETFs, not a single ETF has over 50% overlap in common. There's 195 names that those 5 ETFs hold, but over 100 of them are only held in one ETF. So the investment thesis of the All-Stars was really all about trying to develop a consensus view on which companies best align with popular themes. And we wanted to create a product that could be thought of as your core thematic investing allocation. So rather than trying to mix and match clean energy with cloud computing, with big data, with biotech, you could actually have one strategy that focuses in on those companies that are best aligned with each popular theme that's in the marketplace.
So a core holding for advisors who are building models with a thematic overlay to it. So then it'd be really helpful to get an understanding of the construction process so that they compare it with other ETFs. So, Mike, what is the construction process for MVPS?
Yeah, so what we do is we start with the entire universe of ETFs that we call thematic. So it has to be classified as thematic. Right now, for our qualifying ETFs, that's the US focused and global. There's 136 ETFs that meet that definition. So we take every company that's held inside of those 136 ETFs. Then what we do is we want to create that consensus rating. So how we do that is really 2 big factors. And I like to think of it, when you think about the Pro Bowl and how the players get to the NFL and get to the Pro Bowl, there's really 2 ways it happens. The players and coaches vote, right? So they design, they say these are the players that we think are the best. They're the experts, if you will. We think of the experts in the ETF space as the index providers and the issuers. They're the ones selecting the companies inside of these. And then there's the fans. And we think of the fans as the investors. They're the ones that saying, yeah, I agree with this. They're the RIA strategists, the allocators that are putting their money into these strategies. So what we do is we try to create consensus by saying, what are the number of how many times does a company show up across all of these different ETFs? So for example, NVIDIA is the #1 company from a prevalence perspective across the All-Stars. It's held in over 40 of the 136 qualifying ETFs. But Tesla is the #1 owned, where the money is going. So the actual ownership value of those companies. And what we do is we have a proprietary formula. We call it ownership adjusted market value, where we take the ownership of each company held by the ETFs, and we take that prevalence to come up with that ownership adjusted market value. And then we just focus in on those names at the highest level. So similar as the S&P 500 that owns about 85% of US listed companies by market cap, we own 75% of the ownership adjusted market value. And today that's about 165 companies, weighted based on ownership adjusted market value, but with a single security cap of 5%. So we weight it from that standpoint. So think of it as a modified market capitalization. We just created our own scoring concept for market cap.
I like the Pro Bowl analogy. That makes it really easy to understand. So as you look at the index itself, 160 holdings, it seems like there's going to be some movement over time. What's the anticipated turnover? And then how often would you be rebalancing?
Yeah, you bet. One of the cool things about the All-Stars, really there's 3 key benefits in our mind. #1 is we're focusing on commonality. We're creating a consensus, so rather than owning a company that you and I may not agree is clean energy, we want to own the clean energy company that we both agree on. That's the consensus company. The second thing we want to do is we want to own all of the themes. Just like you don't try to time the market, it's a very dangerous game. Don't try and time themes. You don't want to just allocate to clean energy or just allocate to cloud computing. So you want to make sure you own the themes. But to your direct point, the third thing that we do is our index rebalances monthly, and it's very dynamic in the sense that each month, last month there was 4 new thematic ETFs that came to market. Those 4 new ETFs will now be part of our qualifying universe. There was a lot of money that flowed in and out of these strategies. As that money flows, we're going to dynamically adjust our portfolio to the new weighting methodology. So if, a year from now, you and I are having this conversation, we can talk about, well, there's this new theme in the marketplace. Our strategy is going to dynamically pick that up. And as it becomes more popular, we'll start owning more and more of those companies that are held in that new theme. So it's really evergreen if you think about it, because as the market adjusts and the market resets, our index resets.
Well, Mike, that'll make our quarterly reviews here interesting because there'll be something new to talk about every quarter as it relates to the securities. So, Mike, I feel like the way to really understand the dynamics of this index is to understand the segments that you guys use thematically. Could you walk us through what you guys use?
You bet. So at ETF Action, we have a proprietary classification system where we look at every single ETF in the marketplace and we decide, on an equity level, since we're talking about equities, is it a sector and industry strategy? Is it a broad-based size and style strategy, or is it a thematic strategy? And within thematics, just like you have sectors and industries, you have segments and subgroups, right? So as an example, we have 6 sub-themes plus a multi-theme grouping within thematic. So we have disruptive technology. Disruptive technology is going to be things like cloud computing, cybersecurity. We have evolving consumer, which is going to be things like online retail, social media. We have fintech, which is going to be things like blockchain, digital payments. We have health innovation. Health innovation is going to be genomics, telemedicine, industrial revolution. It's going to be things like robotics, AI, space is a big one now within the industrial revolution space. And we have sustainability. Sustainability is going to be clean energy, water, solar, waste management, things of that nature. So we really break it down into those broad segments. And the key to those segments is that, you may say, if we look at disruptive technology, for example, there's cloud computing, there's big data, there's cybersecurity. What you'll find is there's commonality across all those. A lot of the cybersecurity companies are also cloud computing stocks, right? So we're really trying to group those classifications where you see the most commonality in names. And then the subgroups, of course, there will be differences between cloud and cyber, but we're aiming with our methodology to capture where there is that consensus.
So given the fact that you're looking at so many different themes and the index is going to be changing monthly, the holdings will be changing monthly, that gives you a wide lens into a lot of securities. Are there any in particular that you have your eye on or that stand out to you right now?
Yeah, so, obviously one of the big benefits of ETFs is that you want to own a broad basket and you don't want to try and pick just one company or not. But a couple of areas that we are really focusing on right now is smart infrastructure. So we're looking in for like clean energy names within the infrastructure space. Looking at cybersecurity names like Crowd, Zscaler. We think cybersecurity is just getting started. And as well as within that same kind of fintech, within the fintech segment, we're looking at names like PayPal, Square. We believe that there's a big shift going on within that area. But ideally, trying to time which companies to look into, et cetera. One of the reasons you'd want to own an MVPS is because you're just getting access to those, to the all-stars, to those names that everybody agrees are the leading innovation across our world economy.
And then as you look out to the second half of the year, any particular themes that you have your eye on?
Yeah, so I mentioned smart infrastructure. We think that, if you look through the infrastructure bill, there's a lot of money going into traditional infrastructure ETFs. However, if you really start thinking about where the money is being directed, it's really going to be in that smart space. So I like that sub-theme a lot right now, as well as clean energy, which fits into smart infrastructure, but different names. I think that also will get a tailwind. And as you know, with clean energy, one of the nice things right now is they had a pretty tough last quarter, right? So clean energy names really sold off. So rather than like back in February where these things were extremely extended, we're starting to see that area as maybe an attractive entry point.
Excellent. Mike, I appreciate you coming on, telling the story. These quarterly updates are going to be a lot of fun. So
looking forward to it.
If you're interested in learning more about MVPS, please visit MVPSETF.com. That's MVPSETF.com. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.